Evening, friends. Tyler Grant here at jamplay.com. Thanks for joining us. This is week 2 of our 6-week live lesson series on playing over changes in open position, part 2. We're following up on a previous live lesson series, which is available on the archives here. So last week we started in C major, as I like to do. I always like to review C major. This week we're moving on to its relative minor, the key of A minor. So the key of A minor shares the same notes as the key of C major. And we call this the natural minor scale. So where we had a C major chord here, if we go down to the 6th note of that C major scale, C major chord, that's A. And that is the root note, the tonic note of A minor, which is the relative minor of C. So it shares all the same notes. So let's go ahead and play the A minor scale. Chris, if you want to pull up the page. The first measure is the A natural minor scale. And you'll see that it's the exact same set of notes as C major. However, A is now the tonic. So it sounds... sounds like a minor scale. So natural minor, let's go ahead and play that. Strum your A chord. Get the sound in your head. That's an A1, okay? And let's go ahead and play each note individually and play the open A, and then the 2nd fret, then the 3rd fret with your 3rd finger, then the open D string, and then the E on the 2nd fret, F on the 3rd fret, open G, and then 2nd fret A, that's your tonic. So that's the entire scale in 1 octave. Let's go ahead and descend. Here's your A note, descending to the open G, down to F, E, right on down the scale, open D, C on the 3rd fret of the A string, and then the 2nd fret B, open A. So, I've done lots of explaining of scales and intervals and things like that in all of my lessons here on JamPlay, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over this, but I have to spend a moment explaining how the minor scale works. It's really, however it's best for you to understand is how you should understand it. The way I understand it is as it relates to the major scale. So if we're in the key of A minor, when I say intervals, when I say scale degrees, the A note is 1, the B note is 2, this is just like the major scale, but when we get to the 3, I call that the flat 3, because I want to be very specific that this 3rd is flattened from what my control group is, which is the major scale. So for A, the key of A, we got a 1, a 2, flat 3, in other words, the minor 3rd, because in the A, it would be a major 3rd, but it's flatted as it compares to the key of A. So this is how I like to think about it. So when I say the scale degrees, I say 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. This way, it's very clear which intervals, which scale degrees have been altered from what would be an A major scale. So this is the concept of parallel scales versus relative. C major is these notes. A minor is the same notes. So those scales are relative. If I'm comparing the A minor scale to A major scale, I compare it to the key of A major, and so that's parallel. Where an A major scale would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And an A minor scale is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. And this type of analysis really helps me to understand which intervals in a major scale and a minor scale are the same and which are different. The 1, the 2, the 4, the 5 are the same. The 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th have been flatted. So that's what we're going to shout out right now when we play this scale one more time. So we'll play 1 octave of the A natural minor scale, and I want you to say 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. Here we go. Real slow. Here's A, 1, and then 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1, and then we'll descend. 1, flat 7, flat 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's just how I think of it. The main idea is to get that sound in your head and recognize the sound of each of these notes. And as we're going to walk you through these examples, you'll see how to put them into context and how to play over each of these chord changes in the key of A minor. So you see the entire position there on the following 3 measures. So practice that like we've done in weeks previous. And just to keep things moving, because we have limited time, let's look at the A harmonic minor scale. The only difference is that the 7th of this scale is a major. It's a major 7th. So in other words, the flatted 7 was a G. This is a 7, a leading tone, G sharp. So when we play the scale now, we're just going to call this 7 because it was the same note as it would be in A major. Okay? So it's not flatted anymore. That's all I'm saying. So your set of notes is exactly the same, A, B, C, D, E, F, except for this one altered. Instead of G major, instead of G natural, you play a G sharp. So that's the harmonic minor scale. It has that type of sound. And the reason it's useful is because on a dominant chord in the key of A minor, which is your E7, that note is in there. It's one altered note that happens over a 5 chord in a minor key. Okay, again, I don't want you to have to think about this too much. You're going to hear these things as we go. So let's practice an A harmonic minor scale in 1 octave. And let's go ahead and sing the intervals and say them as we play it. So this is the first measure of the second system there. A harmonic minor. Really slow. Here's A. 1. B is 2. C is flat 3. D is 4. E is 5. F is the flat 6. G is the G sharp, is the 7. And then A is the 1. Let's descend. 1, 7, flat 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 2, 1. Okay? So basically you're going to see in these examples that over the 1 chord, I tend to stick to the natural minor scale. Over the 4 chord, same. Playing notes from the natural minor. When you hit that 5 chord, the dominant, that's when you throw in the G sharp. Because that outlines that particular chord, which resolves back to the A minor. Okay, so we're going to back it way down and just do these simple 3-note examples over each of the chords. So I'll just run you through the progression really quick. This progression is a 1 minor, A minor, to a 3 major, that's C major, to a 4 minor, D minor, to a 5, 7, E7, that's your dominant chord. So the changes sound like this. To the 3 major, go ahead and strum along, to the 4 minor, D minor, any strum pattern, just downstrokes, or to the 5, E7. Back to A minor is the 1, minor. C is the 3, major. D minor is the 4. And E7 is the 5. Resolve to A minor. So that's a real pretty, I like that chord progression. It's different than what we did in the first series of playing over changes in open position. We stuck to the primary chords there. So each one of these lessons in this series, again, to review what we did last week, I'm throwing in some different chords. You know, a lot of these are 4-chord progressions, and we're going to try to use the same figure over as many of these chords as we can to tie it together and let the chord changes do the work. Keep your ideas really simple. So speaking of simple, let's look at the A minor 3-note figures. So the first one, just like all the others we've done so far, starts on the root note of the chord, the A, and just goes up to the third, in this case flatted third. So root to the flatted third right down to the root. So in other words, 1, 2, flat 3, 2, 1 is our first figure. Let's play that and repeat it. A ready and a go and repeat and great. Now we start on the flatted third, which was the highest note of the first figure, and we just work our way up to the next chord tone, which is flat 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, flat 3. So each of these little figures outlines the sound of that chord, okay? So here's the second measure, starting on the C note, and we'll play it and repeat it. Ready and a go and repeat and. Okay, so now you know what we're going to do next. We'll go from the fifth, which was the highest note of the previous figure, and work our way up to the tonic, which is the next chord tone. So we go 5, flat 7, 1, 1, flat 7, 5. Still sounds like an A minor chord. Let's play that figure and repeat it. Ready and a go and repeat and. So those are the main 3. We're just working our way from one chord tone to the next, and there's only 3 chord tones, right? The root, the flat third, and the fifth. Root, flat third, fifth. Root, flat third, fifth. It's all the same 3 chord tones. So now there's just a fourth example, which is just a little alternate figure, which starts on the flatted 6 to the 7, flatted 7 to the tonic. So this is just in case you're on a different note, and this is scale-wise from the flat 6, flat 7, 1. But to descend, we'll do the same as we did the previous figure. 1, flat 7, 5. To land on another chord tone. So we're starting on a non-chord tone, getting to a chord tone, and then descending back to a chord tone. So we're always hitting a chord tone on the strong beat if we can. So anyway, let's play that figure and repeat it. Ready and a go and. Repeat and. Okay, so moving on to the next system, C major is our chord, which is the 3 major in this key. And now these figures are going to be exactly the same as the 1 chord in C major that we did last week. So these should look familiar for those who have joined us before. In any case, the first measure is starting on the root of the C and going to the third, back to the root. Here we go. Ready and a go and. Repeat and. Okay, now same thing we always do. We'll start on the third and work our way up to the fifth. Back to the third. Here we go. Ready and a go and. Repeat So now from the 5th, by way of the 6, up to the tonic. So we're skipping the 7 in this case. 5, 6, 1, 1, 6, 5 of a C chord, okay? Ready and a go and repeat and. Okay, and the last of these 4 figures for a C major chord is the same sort of example as we've done before, where what if you are on the 6? Well, you walk 6 up to the 7 to the 1, but you descend 1, 6 to the 5 to keep those chord tones on the strong resolving beats, okay? Let's play that figure. Ready and a go and. Sorry, I played it wrong. Starting on the 6, here we go. Ready and a go and. Repeat. And. Okay, so our next chord is the 4 chord, D minor. This is still going to be all notes that are diatonic to the A natural minor scale. Nothing is altered yet. That'll happen when we get to the 5 chord. So here's your figures for the D minor. It starts on the root note of the D minor chord, goes up to the flatted 3rd, and right back down. Here we go. A ready and a go and. Repeat and. Great. And next we go from the flat 3rd up to the 5th and then back down. Try that one. Ready and a go and. Repeat. Okay, so now as we did with the A minor chord, for this next figure, we'll go from the 5 to the flatted 7 of that D minor chord to the tonic. Tonic, flat 7, 5. Here we go. Ready and a go and. Repeat. And the last figure is that alternate that starts on the 6th note, flat 7, 1, and then descending by way of 1, flat 7, 5. So starting on the 6 of that D minor chord, ready and a go and. Repeat. Okay, it all sounds like a D minor chord in the key of A minor. Okay, so we'll get on to the next page, and now we're looking at the 3-note figures that outline the 5 dominant 7th, in other words, the E7 chord. So this is where we work that harmonic minor scale, but we're still working it around the chord tones of your E major chord or your E7 chord. So here we go. The first figure goes from the tonic note, the root note of the E7 chord, up to the next note of the scale, and then up to that raised 7th or that major 7th, the G sharp. So it's like, you know, if you're analyzing this, this is where it gets tricky. I'd say 1, flat 2, 3 of an E major chord, 3, flat 2, 1. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just play the notes and hear that sound, okay? Hear the sound, get it under your fingers. That's the most important thing. So here's that first figure. Ready and a go and. repeat. So you hear this sound, you know this sound. Kind of like in Spanish music and stuff like that, right? So that's all I'm doing. I'm playing the notes of an A harmonic minor scale, but focusing on the chord tones of the E7 chord, which are all in that scale, okay? So that's the tonic up to the third of the chord. Now I'll work my way from the third up to the fifth of the chord, this way. Let's try that. Second measure of the E7 figures. Ready and a go, and repeat, and great. Now from the fifth of the chord, we work our way up flat 6 to the flat 7 of the chord. Because remember, seventh chords have 4 notes in them: the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. In this case, the flatted seventh. So this goes from the fifth up to the seventh, and back from the seventh down to the fifth. Here we go. Ready and go, and repeat, and okay. So now we're looking at a figure that goes from the fifth, skipping the 6 altogether, right to the flatted 7, up to the tonic. Tonic, flat 7, 5. It's just an alternate thing. You can target any one of those notes: the fifth, the flatted 7, or the tonic. So let's play that one. This is the fourth measure there of the E7 figures. Ready and a go, and repeat, and hear the sound of that chord in there, right? So our next, that's all we got. Cool. All right, I'm keeping it simple. There's a couple kind of alternate ones, but let's not worry about them. Basically, you just go up to higher octaves. It's the same as that one, just an octave higher. So use your scale pattern to find those, how to get from the root up to the third, an octave higher. Same, an octave lower. And we will run into some of these in our examples coming up here. Are there any questions so far, Chris? Should we take a break?
We have no questions good so far, but I will let everybody know if you do have questions, type them into the chat, and I'll pass them along to Tyler, and we'll get them answered for you.
Okay, well, let's stick to business here. Getting right to our examples of how to put these into context. So here's our A minor example number 1, looking at the second system of the page there. So you'll see the chord changes. Each measure is 1 chord, and we'll play this along with the track. Now remember, all of you Jam Play members can access the downloads of all the material. You can download the tracks, you can download the guided practice sessions, which go through each of these several times that you can just play along with until you get it down. So non-members, you should think about signing up because you get all these bonus little perks. And you can access all of these lessons on archive, all you Jam Play members. And that's really important because, you know, it kind of goes by and you could just play it again and rewind the part you missed if you missed anything. So here's example number 1. Notice that on the A minor chord, I'm starting on the third, the flatted third, and playing that figure. So this is the same rhythm as we did last week. It goes 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. So when I'm flat picking this, I'll go down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Okay? So if you're holding a pick, that's the correct way to play that. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And each measure will be that same rhythm. So you can focus on the notes. You don't have to think about the rhythm too much. So there's that first figure as it relates to an A minor chord. Next measure, we play the same figure over the C major. So this is another example of how you can play the same figure over two different chords. And that makes your music sound cohesive if you can find those little avenues. Then we move on to the D minor and just do the first example of a D minor chord. And then on the E7, same thing, the first example of the E7 figures from the root of the E7 up to the third. Then moving on through the rest of this, the last four measures of the example, we're on a root position of an A minor, an octave higher than the one we did in the example. So that's that. Now I alter this a tiny bit to make it fit over a C major chord. I'm going to use this figure over the C major. From the fifth of the C major chord up to the tonic. Okay. Then moving on to D minor, I'm going to alter this position however I need to make it fit D minor. So you see I'm using the most economical movement from one figure to another. So there it is over a D minor chord. The fifth flat 7 root of the D minor chord. And then to the E7, again, I'm going to move as little as possible. I'm just going to go down a half step. So that's the fifth of the E7 up to the flatted 7. And then the whole thing repeats. So I've got really slow rhythm track, 35 beats per minute. Let's go ahead and play this figure and repeat it at that really slow tempo. Example number 1 in A minor. 1, 2, 3, and go and. Repeat the whole example. Okay, that sure is fun. Why don't we try this at the next faster tempo? This will be 47 beats per minute. It still should be pretty basic, but you might hear it a little bit better in context with things kind of moving a little quicker. So let's try that. Same example, 47 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. repeat. Okay, so there's two faster tempos that you can work with, and I'm going to go ahead and play the next one, 60 beats per minute, and I'm just going to show you, as I do often in these lessons, just how I would put this into, my own improvisation. So I'm going to try to just kind of improvise a solo here, sticking to as many of those 3-note figures as I can, and showing you how to use these over a chord change and how to flow from one to another. I'm going to change up the rhythm a little bit here and there, okay? So just go ahead and listen, check it out. A 1, a 2, a 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So obviously, if you have a song with a melody, you'll play the melody and work these little figures around it. But anyway, Jam Play members, download those tracks and just kind of practice playing along with them once you got these little figures memorized. And you'll find these little ways that you're going to flow through the changes and play note selections that are appropriate to those chord changes. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next example? Example number 2 in the key of A minor here. So, this I'm throwing in one little extra thing at the end of each measure. So otherwise the rhythm is the same. We're starting on this figure, which is root position, A minor, starting on the root note A and working our way up to the flatted third. Then back down with a little lower neighbor at the end. So that's just a little added bonus. That's the first measure. Next measure, root position C major. That same little lower neighbor at the end. Next note, root position D minor. Playing just the lower scale note when I get to the root. Then the E7, this will be from the 5th flat 7 to the tonic of the E7 chord. Back down to the 5th, and then the lower note back to the 5th. Okay. Moving on, it kind of changed it up a little bit. We start using some descending figures, starting on the flatted third of the A minor chord, descending to the tonic, and then from there putting another figure onto it, the tonic, flat 7 down to the 5, playing the lower note below that. So that figure is again that A minor measure goes just putting 2 of the figures together. Doing the same thing on a C major chord here, starting on the 5th of the C chord, working our way down to the third, then from the third down to the tonic, lower neighbor, back to the tonic. D minor, we use a similar thing, the flatted third of the D minor chord, working our way down to the tonic of the D minor. Then from that tonic note down, the flatted 7 to the 5th, that lower note, back to the 5th. Then on the E7, we're going to start on the root, work our way down by way of the flatted 7, 1, flat 7, 5, 5 down to the 3. And I'm going to skip all the way down to the open E string, the root of the E, back to the 4th fret, the 3rd of the E chord. The reason I do this, that's a lot easier than playing. That's a big stretch, and it sounds kind of goofy anyway. I'm just going to use an arpeggiated E chord to finish this whole idea out. It's the last measure, and I might as well change it up. Altering it by one note from what the previous chords are doing. Okay? So let's put this on at the slowest tempo and try this example number 2. A 1, a 2, a 3, and 4, and. Okay, so you're getting some ideas as to how to string some figures together and also how to kind of put a little finishing touch on one of the figures just by using a lower note, a lower neighbor in the scale. So let's go ahead and move. Any questions yet?
We do have one question.
Okay.
I'm going to save it actually until you get to the improvising part.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and just crank this up to the next tempo, 47 beats per minute, and see how we do. Example number 2, A minor, 47. A 2, a 3, and 4, and. mesmerizing little melody. We have time to go to the next tempo, so let's go ahead and do that. See if you're feeling ambitious, and we'll try this at 60 beats per minute. And then I'll kind of do an improvisation based on these figures. Here we go.
Let me sneak this question in right here.
Okay.
This is from Jaybird, and Jaybird's wanting to know, when you improvise, do you use your ear, or are you thinking about chord tones?
Both. Pretty much both. These things work together. That's, if you practice them in the way that we did, you're thinking of the chord tones as you're playing them, as you're listening to them, so they'll all start to sink into your vocabulary. It's the same thing as language, as spoken language, written language. If you use those figures, it's just like using words. You'll memorize them, and you could spell them out, and you could use them in context without thinking about it. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make these things as automatic and natural as we can, and also know how to explain it if we need to, that it's the third of the chord, that it's the fifth of the chord. And oftentimes, you're looking at the fretboard and you're trying to identify, oh, I know that this note's the fifth of my C chord, so I'm going to go for it. Sometimes you'll just hear that and your finger will go there. But most of us have to sort of think about where these things are on the road map of the fretboard. And for me, it starts with understanding open position really well and knowing how all those different chord shapes fit and where the chord tones are in open position. From there, you can branch off up the neck, and it's pretty easy to figure it out because the patterns just repeat themselves. So to answer your question, yeah, both. Think about it, hear it, and, eventually it'll all just start falling under your fingers. The faster you get, the more you want these things to be automatic because it's hard to think of these things fast. So I do a lot of this slow practice and really think about the notes as I'm doing the slow practice. And then as it goes faster, it'll just be that much more natural and your fingers will automatically jump on them. Okay? So, let's go ahead and play this at 60 beats per minute. Example number 2. Now, there is a faster tempo as well for you who are really ambitious. I might put that on in a minute here, but let's do 60 beats per minute. A 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, and 3, and 4, and... Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and put on the fast track just so you can hear this, in context, 75 beats per minute. Now, depending on what kind of style you're playing, I'm kind of gearing these a little bit around flat pick style. But again, it doesn't mean you have to play this in a flat picking context. These are the same figures you'd be using in a rock and roll song or a jazz song or a country song or a folk song or a reggae song. So I'm just going to go ahead and crank this up a little bit, see what it would sound like in sort of a flat picking context. And again, I'm going to use these same 3-note figures. I'm going to use other notes to connect them. And I'm going to try to just show you how I can flow through the changes here. And yeah, let's give it a go. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. ambitious with the triplets there. Anyway, you get the idea. Just take these figures and flow through the changes. I could play these, like kind of demonstrated this last time. I could play some of these figures and you would just hear the changes anyway, even if the chords weren't happening underneath them, since I'm targeting those main chord tones. Any more questions?
One more here.
All right.
Interesting question here. How do you choose the tempos?
Well, last series, it seemed like things were going a little quick, and some students weren't able to keep up on the basic stuff, so I kind of slowed everything down a little bit. On this round, I'm just trying to find the slowest tempo that makes sense in context. If I'm going like... you're just not hearing the context of the piece. So I'm trying to find the slowest tempo that you hear the context of the changes, but is easy enough to follow along with. Now, in flat-picking music, in bluegrass music, for instance, and in some jazz and other forms of music, things can get fast. I might, these are just meant to be like the range that I think a typical beginning to intermediate student can play. If I was getting really advanced, I might be a faster tempo. So that would be if I was playing a song that's that fast. So we don't have actual songs to reference here, but you have common chord progressions that you can find songs that sort of sound like that. So again, as it is with every type of music, you got to kind of go out there and learn the songs that you like. This is almost a similar change to like a Hotel California. There's songs out there that have these chords in one form or another in them. We're just not allowed to use them because they're copywritten. So studying public domain music is good. I got a mule, her name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. Same chords, So learn music, learn songs. That's the idea. I've got a lot of lessons here on Jamplay that can help with that. A bunch of public domain songs, which we did in a live series. It's in the live series archive. And, of course, in my flat picking series and in my Telecaster series, we go through some common public domain songs. So it's good to know how to put this into context, because ultimately we're trying to play to suit the song, right? Okay, any other questions? All right, well, I think we're good to go. We got done in a little early tonight, but y'all enjoy this. Come see us next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. here in the Rocky Mountains. And these are streaming for free on the live stream. Thanks for chiming in, all you members in the chat room. And also you can watch it live on the Facebook, all non-members. However, all you members get the archives, you get all the written material and the tracks, and you should be Jamplay members anyway because it's an amazing resource. So see you next week. Thanks again. Tyler Grant here.